The votes have been counted. Some results not surprising, some results quite surprising. We're here to talk about primary night and what happens between now and November with our political insiders, Brian Gaddie and Abdul-Hakim Shabazz. We will start in Marion County, gentlemen, where it was mixed results, needless to say. That might be an understatement, in fact, when it comes to slated candidates versus non-slated candidates on the Democratic side. We've talked about the slating process. We won't go into that. People can go but find back episodes of the Insiders if they want the lowdown. If they don't know it by now, if they're interested in it. But long story short, Kate Sweeney Bell, in the Marion County clerk's race, she of course is the chair of the county Democratic Party. She did win, although it was probably closer than she expected. And a lot of her preferred candidates, a lot of the slated candidates, did not win their races, notably Faith Kimbrough in the county recorder's race and Andrea Hundley in the Senate District 46 race. Brian, we will start with you as the Democratic insider. It turned nasty in some circles, and Black voters in particular came out in rather large numbers, it would appear, for a midterm primary to try to send a message to, I think, Ms. Sweeney Bell and Democratic Party leadership, the establishment, that whether they're tired of slating or just tired of the way things are, they were trying to get that message across, and it looks like they did.
Well, that's true. I mean, the Black vote did turn out heavily. And Billy Breaux, even though she didn't win, is very popular among African-American Democrats. She's a personal and political friend of mine. I've known her for a long time. And you just have this issue of slating and also the issue of the Black vote. And will the Marion County Democratic Party see this as an opportunity to heal the divide or wounds that we do clearly have in our party? There is clearly a divide between African-American Democrats and the Marion County Democratic Party leadership. And we can't stick our head in the sand like an ostrich and act like it doesn't exist. Like I said on our last show, we don't address the needs of African-American voters and African-American Democrats at our own peril. And if we don't do that, we will lose to the Republicans. So we must address these issues. And I think tomorrow night's results show that we've got a lot of work to do, no doubt about it.
Before I move on to Abdul, what, in your opinion, does Kate Sweeney Bell need to do, say? What do Democrats need to do to come together? Because, as we know, Republicans are coming after Ryan Mears, the county prosecutor, pretty heavily in November, and they're going to need every vote on deck if they want to hold that position.
We just have to address, again, like I said earlier, we just have to address the issues that concern African-American voters. And I know a lot of African-American Democrats are concerned about the slating process. I don't know if we need to necessarily get rid of slating. It may need to be reformed in ways that it seems like it will address the not just the needs of Black voters, but making it maybe more in tune with the times, I guess. Again, I'm not a slating expert. I don't want to pretend I am, but I will say this though: we do have an issue as a party when it comes to African-American voters and the leadership of the Marion County Democratic Party. And I really believe we have to resolve that issue. I'm a proud African-American Democrat, but I'm also a proud Marion County Democrat. So I want us to get together. I want us to resolve these issues so we can help Prosecutor Mears get reelected. Because if we don't have very long to get this bridge divide healed and deal with these issues. Because if we don't, we could possibly lose. So, like I said earlier, we got a lot of work to do. We got to get started.
Abdul, for Republicans, is this going to matter? And this, whatever fallout there is from primary night on the Democratic side, Marion County, for Republicans, is this going to matter more for the prosecutor's race this year, or are they looking more forward to 2023 when the mayor's office is on the ballot?
I would say both. And first of all, I want to make sure I'm on the record saying this again. Slating is the biggest scam I've ever seen in my entire life, where candidates are compelled to pay a fee to a political party and an agreement that if you run, then if you get slated, then we'll go ahead and we'll support you. If not, then we'll just keep your money. That's total crap, in my personal opinion. And also, two other races, too, you got to keep in mind, not just the county clerk's race, not just the county recorder's race and Senate District 46, but also keep in mind, and this shows you how upset people are, because these are very down the ballot races about this site here. In Center Township, the Center Township constable who was slated, Lance Stevens, lost to Denise Paul Church. how does the Center Township Constable lose a primary? And also up in Pike Township, Annette Johnson worked her butt off and beat the slated candidate Claudette Anderson. So there's some major divisions in the Marion County Democratic Party, which Republicans are smart. They'll reach out to those disenfranchised African Americans and say, hey, you know what? We don't expect you to become a Republican. However, we'll work with you. We'll give you a voice. We'll give you a seat at the table. And that, I think, can make a difference, not only in the prosecutor's race, but in the mayor's race and the council's races next year.
And Gaddie, Abdul-Hakim, Shabazz, our political insiders, talking primary night. Let's move to congressional races. Abdul, in the 1st District, Northwest Indiana, I frankly was surprised, perhaps not at the outcome of the race, but by the size of the victory of Jennifer Ruth Green over former LaPorte Mayor Blair Milo in the Republican primary. Blair Milo seen, I guess, as the more establishment figure. Jennifer Ruth Green labeled Blair Milo a never Trump liberal late in the campaign, and either that worked or something worked, because she really cleaned house in that race.
Yes, she did. Jennifer Ruth Green ran on a couple different issues. We talked about this last night when we were doing our political coverage on WIBC Radio Network Indiana. Jennifer Ruth Green, she identified herself as a Trump supporter very early on in the race, to sort of sort up that Trump vote. Number two, then she went and attacked Blair Milo. Blair Milo expected to win on, in fact, she was mayor, worked for the governor, military veteran, and all that's fine in a normal universe, but we don't live in a normal universe anymore. We live in a Donald Trump universe, unfortunately. And so because of the fact that Jennifer Ruth Green tied herself to Donald Trump so fast and so well, that helped. Also the fact that a lot of the other votes were split because you had 8, 9, 7 candidates running as well. And if you think about it, in a lot of these places where you had multiple candidates, the Donald Trump candidate did not win a majority, win a plurality, but not necessarily a majority.
What does this mean for Democrats in this race? Of course, Republicans had made no secret that they wanted to target Representative Frank Mervan in the 1st District, particularly since the district's been drawn a little bit differently, might be more favorable to Republicans. Brian, does the election of a pro-Trump candidate, even though it's a Black woman in a district that still has a pretty sizable people of color population, how does that play into Representative Mervan and how he defends that seat?
I think what Congressman Mervan needs to do is just reach out to the voters and again, like we've always talked about here on the show, address the issues of the voters are grappling with on a day-to-day basis and meet the voters where they are. That's what Congressman Mervan needs to do in order to hold that seat. And I think he will definitely do that. So he will definitely hold that seat. The fact that his Republican opponent is an African-American woman, I don't think is going to make that much of a difference, because she's a Trump Republican. And Trump Republicans are toxic in the Black community. They're very unpopular.
Well, we say that, and I guess we're going to get a lot of examples of that coming up in the fall between Jennifer Ruth Green, Herschel Walker in the Georgia U.S. Senate race. We'll talk about that down the line, perhaps. 9th District race on the Republican side, seen as a safe Republican district, but Aaron Houchin, former state lawmaker, coming out on top of that one, Abdul. Again, multi-candidate race, dividing the vote, and yet you didn't hear, at least if you're basing this on television advertising, didn't seem to hear as much from Aaron Houchin as you did from some of the other candidates, and yet she was able to win.
Yes, Aaron Houchin, she started early because remember, she resigned her seat a couple of days after the session started back in January. She just basically spent campaigning 24-hour nonstop. She had endorsements. She raised a lot of money. She had a lot of local and national endorsements as well. Also, she was a known figure. She did have name ID because, number one, she ran before against Trey Hollingsworth a few years ago, lost that race, but came back to run again. Also, she was, she had checked off all the boxes, Second Amendment, pro-life, pro-Donald Trump, against critical race theory and mandates. She checked off all the boxes that a Republican should check off, particularly in the 9th District, and she won. Mike Sodrell, this is like, I don't have enough fingers to count how many race times he's lost, running for Congress. So he may just need to just go quit and call it a day. And Sue Barnes-Israel just couldn't quite get that traction that he wanted because he came in 3rd.
Aaron Houchin, of course, left the state legislature to run for Congress. Speaking of the state legislature, a lot was talked about, Abdul, of whether the Republican supermajority would become even more conservative, perhaps, than it is already. But based on the primary results, well, a lot of far-right challengers who jumped in the race, particularly post-pandemic, they were against all the pandemic rules, and they didn't think Republicans did enough to stop them. But a lot of those candidates, matter of fact, most of those candidates appear fell short on primary night.
Yes, and I want to say at the end of the day, they picked up maybe one seat, maybe just a net seat of one. That was against Dan Leonard up in the Huntington area. But no, right. Those guys got their clocks clean. John Jacobs lost, Kurt Nicely lost. The far right candidates all lost. And in some instances, they ran two far right candidates against an establishment right candidate, so to speak. So I'm not quite sure what their logic and rationale was, but it's good news. Indiana's a conservative state. Like, let's just be honest, Republican state. It's a conservative state, but it's not a crazy state, at least not yet. And so I know Todd Houston went to bed last night, the Speaker of the House, for probably the first decent night's sleep he's had in a really, really long time, knowing that he kept 99% of his caucus.
Brian, what are the chances coming out of primary night that Democrats are able to pick up even a few seats to cut into that supermajority in the House and Senate? I know the Democratic Party, the state Democratic Party, put out a statement last night saying that they are going to talk about kitchen table issues, the economic record. However, as we speak, we're still talking about inflation. We're still talking about gas prices. That doesn't seem on the surface to possibly be a strong argument to run on coming November.
Well, as I've stated before, I'll state again, we Democrats have to address the economic concerns of Hoosiers. And if we do that in a very succinct, cogent way, in a very believable way, showing empathy and showing that we do understand what Hoosiers are grappling with on a day-to-day basis with inflation, with gas prices. Plus, we point out the extremism of the Republican Party. I know Abdul said, Indiana is a conservative Republican state, but it's not a crazy state. Well, it depends on how you define crazy, because a lot of these Republicans are still crazy to a lot of us Democrats. They may not be extremely crazy, but they're still crazy to a lot of us Democrats. And we still need to point out that extremism of Republicans. So that way we can point it out to suburban women voters, which I believe a lot of them would be very open to voting for a Democrat if we, in a very effective way, point out the extremism of Republicans. I think we must do that if we have any chance of cutting into that supermajority. And I believe we do have a good chance to do it.
One other race I quickly want to cover before we're done with primary night, that's the Hamilton County Prosecutor's race. No Democratic candidate as of yet in that race, but Abdul, our old friend, our old colleague, Greg Garrison, longtime talk show host for WIBC, defeating the incumbent prosecutor, Lee Buckingham, and beating him rather handily. Now, there are going to be a lot of questions asked about what kind of prosecutor Greg Garrison will be, but why do you think he was able to so easily win that race?
Greg won it. He had the fire in the belly. For a 74-year-old guy, I got to give credit where credit is due. He's concerned about the crime issue in Hamilton County, so a lot of folks were. In addition to that, he campaigned. He ran advertisements, did all the door knocking, the whole 9 yards. And also got to remember, too, Lee Buckingham, he was like a three-term incumbent. And usually after 2 terms, that's about it. Third terms are always tricky to begin with. Lee hadn't had a primary challenge since his first run back almost 12 years ago. And so all the planets fell in alignment for Greg. Now, the trick is for Greg to deliver, which I think he will. He'll professionalize the office. He'll bring in new prosecutors, work more closely with law enforcement as well. But I got to give credit where credit's due.
One other issue we've got to talk about before we are done today is and I hate to use the term bombshell because it's such a journalism cliche, but what else do you call the leak of a draft opinion from, the biggest Supreme Court case that's been heard in quite some time? Could mean the end of abortion rights as we know them in the United States. Even it looks like we'll have a patchwork of state laws governing abortion if this ruling becomes final. Now, Brian, of course, Democrats are going to try to make this a big campaign issue this November moving forward. However, even though polls consistently show that a majority of Hoosiers favor keeping Roe v. Wade in place, that really hasn't helped Democrats have a lot of statewide success. How does this potentially change things if it does?
That's because the issue of abortion not being available to Hoosier women has never been really something that's a possibility until now. It's looking more and more likely that Roe v. Wade is going to be gone soon. And that's going to be an issue that we as Hoosier Democrats need to make Hoosier women aware of, that a fundamental constitutional right that you've had since Roe v. Wade, since 1973, is going to soon be gone. And that'll be because of the Republican Party. And then, in my opinion, stacking the Supreme Court. And I don't want to get too much into the weeds here, but there's at least one of those seats that, quite frankly, they with a lot of chicanery they got. And that's obviously the seat that that Merrick Garland never even got an opportunity to get a hearing. So, I mean, I know as a Democrat, I'm complaining about that, but the point is that this is an issue that has always been never seen as, well, is this really going to happen? We don't know. Well, we can see it's going to happen. Roe v. Wade is definitely on life support, and I think it's an issue we can rally Democrats behind and get Hoosier women to vote for us because of it.
Give Abdul the last word here. Abdul, let's say Roe v. Wade is overturned. What does that mean for Indiana, whether it's politically or just socially, how we live our everyday lives? Will it have that big an impact on the state, do you think?
There's no saying in politics, so be careful what you wish for because you just might get it. I think if Roe v. Wade is overturned and returned back to the states, Republicans start restricting abortion rights, particularly here, reproductive freedoms here in Indiana. There's going to be a lot of suburban women who will not be happy in those in those donut county areas. And so I think Republicans should be very careful trying to overturn Roe v. Wade. Also, keep in mind, too, there'll be a patchwork because Roe v. Wade won't be overturned, just be given back to the states. In my home state of Illinois, we'll basically have a welcome sign for women who want to exercise their rights to reproductive choice. So Republicans need to be very careful when they start going down this road of restricting reproductive freedom. So that's just my saying, my friend.
We shall see. Abdul-Hakim Shabazz, Brian Gaddie, our political insiders. Always a pleasure, gentlemen. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ray.